All right, well, it's 3 o'clock. There's 42 people in the room. I think that's a good enough, I'd say, indicator that we can get started in this Meet the Funders session. So I'm Nuala from the URBACT Secretariat. Not in Brussels, unfortunately, with the team on the spot live. I'm in Paris, but I do have a team from Brussels with me joining here from their various home offices. So this is the session on. It's titled Cohesion Policy and the European Urban Initiative. We're going to look at a broad, let's say, selection of opportunities for cities that the Commission make available, and we're going to look specifically at the European Urban Initiative and what that can offer cities. So today we have with us Thomas de Bethune, who is team leader for the urban policy team in DG Regio, the unit for inclusive growth, urban and territorial development. It's quite a long title, so you're all from the same unit, so I'll only say that once. Thomas is also the desk officer for the URBACT program, in particular amongst his other duties, so he knows us very well. We have François Gallagher, who's a policy officer, so in the same unit. And François has been following up on urban innovative actions in particular, so he can talk a little bit about that in the innovative action strand. And we also have Laura Liger, who's in the same unit with her colleagues, who will be also on hand to answer any questions. So as I say, we're here to talk about funding opportunities under cohesion policy, and there are many. The timing is good, as we mentioned this morning in the early session, that as you're preparing your local integrated action plans for implementation, we're just launching a new cycle of funding and gearing up for another 7 years. So in terms of timing, it's actually pretty good, let's say, for once, with these things are lining up. So without further ado, let's hear from Thomas and François on the urban dimension of cohesion policy, and then we'll take your questions. Do post them in the chat as we go along, so that we can keep track of them and ask them afterwards. Or when they're finished presenting, you can also ask to take the floor by sharing your audio and video, pushing the blue button on the top right hand of your screen. So Thomas, you're kicking us off. I'll start sharing the screen, and you can take the floor.
Thank you, Nuala, and welcome everyone. Indeed, we have gathered 3 of us to join this afternoon, and I've prepared a short presentation for you to overall, I would say, have an helicopter view on what is the support framework, the investment possibilities within the cohesion policy, and with a bit more detailed on the state of play of the European Urban Initiative, which is not yet starting, but will soon, and we are on right track for that. And François will take over in a couple of minutes to this presentation to go a bit deeper on what is the EUI about and what you can expect out of it. So the aim is indeed, as you mentioned, we are at the end of a cycle of 7 years, 14-20, and have a next cycle of 21-27 to focus on, first of all, the overall support that is provided by the European Union, and in particular the cohesion policy for sustainable urban development. You might already know this. If not, I strongly first recommend you to look at what is cohesion policy and how much money is flowing into the different cities in Europe, thanks to the European Regional Development Fund or the Cohesion Fund, for example, or the European Social Fund. It's overall 150 billion euro invested in cities, which is a huge amount. These are main investments you might often see are co-financed by the EU, like the main transport infrastructure, for example, or the energy efficiency measures in your cities. And out of this amount, there is a specific, I would say, dedicated envelope, which represents 10% of this, 17 million, which actually is delivered directly at the city level and fitting into what we call the Sustainable Urban Development Strategy, the Sustainable Urban Development Approach, which delegates part of the fund management to the cities themselves. It's rather an important strand of this of our policy, because it allows sub-local authorities to, so under the regional level, to directly select their priorities, their investment, and to make them fitting with their own local strategies. If you want to know more about this, I really advise you to contact your managing authorities that are managing the structural funds in your region or at national level. The contact details are rather easy to find. They are on the website of InfoRegio at the European Commission, but also your urban contact point will definitely, if not already done, connect you with the right organization. Next slide, please. Beside the support for investment, there is the support for capacity and innovation also that exists, because only investment, it's not enough, only funding is not enough. We know that cities are asking also for some support, and URBACT is obviously one of the piece of the puzzle here for support that you know already really well. You are here because you are part of the URBACT community, helping on the action planning networks, on the capacity building, and on some capitalization exercise. There is the equivalent, I would say, program, which is called the Urban Development Network beside URBACT, which is mainly focusing on the cohesion policy patterns of the investment in cities, and with dedicated events that are happening at pan-European or local level on specific issues linked to the implementation of the structural funds in particular. Then you've got also the support for experimentation with the urban innovative actions. I suppose many of you have already heard about that. This is direct funding, which is provided for investment for high-level experiment innovation in specific teams in cities in the EU. There were a number of calls during this programming period. More than 80 projects have been funded, and a lot of learnings out of this, and we will come that into a minute with the discussion on the presentation on the European Urban Initiative, which will continue this UIA initiative. There is also some support on the governance side with the Urban Agenda for the EU, which is this multi-level governance approach to improve the way cities are taken into account into the funding, the knowledge, and the regulations at the EU level. And we are working here with numerous cities and with member states on developing these solutions. This is also part of the support we provide, not only by funding, but also by delivering and helping deliver the investments on the ground. And there is also other technical assistance support that I will just here refer for memory. Next slide, please. If we look at the new programming period, the 21-27, which is of higher interest for you, but still for those who have seen the 14-20, we are in a certain continuity, although the urban dimension has been reinforced, which means that we expect that more funds, more investment will take place in cities. There is a specific focus of 8%, which is dedicated to the sustainable urban development in each member state. It was only 5% during the past programming period, and this means that there is an important increase, and that we can expect that cities will have much more funds if we accumulated it with other sources, not only this earmarking, but also with the post-COVID recovery funds. It will really and drastically increase. But there is also a specific objective, which is called Europe Closer to Citizens, within the different priorities of the Cohesion Policy 21-27, which is a cross-cutting objective with a territorial policy objective, which aims at supporting different types of urban areas, not only central cities or neighborhoods, but also broaderly to functional urban areas, metropolitan level when appropriate. What is common in all these elements is that now there is a more formalized approach of the integrated approach. It was already part of the previous programming period. In this case, the policy objective 5 and the earmarking have now a clear aim and organization within the regulation on how this should be implemented. I will come to that in a second. In terms of focus, there is a quite broad coverage of thematic areas, being economical, environmental, climate, demographic, social aspects, but with a particular focus on the green and digital transition. And that will be my second focus in a minute. Next slide, please. Indeed, as I just mentioned, in the regulation, we can now find key requirements to operationalize cohesion policy support to what we call the integrated territorial development. It's quite important to mention because it means that if you want to fund your investment with the structural funds, you will need to comply with this minimum requirement to develop strategies, integrated territorial development strategies that comply with this requirement. It was not so well spelled in the previous regulations. For the first time here now, we have a full explanation of what it is. And these 5 criteria are definitely spelled here, and you might find much more detailed. We have developed a sustainable urban development strategy self-assessment tool in an handbook that you can find on URBACT.eu, describing really step by step how to define the targeted area according to the development needs and potential. What means territorial and local strategies, and what are the different level of involvement, and in particular the partnership principle and the responsibility of local and territorial bodies to select the project and to be really first-hand in this selection process, as well as the integrated approach, which means that there is a coordinated intervention locally and a cross-sectoral, multi-territorial approach. All these elements can be found in this handbook, much more into details. You might also see that actually these requirements are quite well fitting with the new Leipzig Charter that you might have seen as well, which is this common framework that we decided to follow between member states and EU on how to follow the principles of the urban sustainable urban development. These principles here, minimum requirements, are rather similar with what we have in our common charter, which means that you can at local level also refer to both of them when developing your strategies. Thank you, Nuala. Next slide now. Here, 2 slides that might create a bit of confusion, but it is on the purpose, because we often say that there is so many types of support at the EU level. And as I mentioned, there is a green and digital transition that are in the focus, in the radar of most of the policy paper for the moment to orient the investments, whatever is the different sources of funding and major funds you might have spotted. And we took here the first one, which is I would say an overview of the numbers type of initiatives that exist at the EU level that provide either policy framework, sometimes direct funding to cities, technical support around the green dimension, the Green Deal, with the overall objective, which is first of all that there is an amount of the EU funds that needs to be allocated to these Green Deal objectives, and cohesion policy is part of it. And as well within the different sustainable urban development strategy, which is one of the thematic focus. Why I'm mentioning here, and you've got all these different initiatives that you can find here, being, for example, the Affordable Housing Initiative or the Climate Neutral Cities that just closed this application with nearly 400 applicants from the numbers we got. Because I want you to get the point that you can have access to this initiative, but it's also up to you to investigate where is the highest potential for your city to invest, where you are good at, and which programs fits to your ambition at local level. And there is so many cities and so many different situations at local level in Europe that these programs, there is at least one that could correspond to your ambition and to your needs. And the issues are often so complex that it is sometimes needed to go much more into details of one or another sector to develop a specific solution to your local issues and challenges. You might recognize some of this program into your own local context. Again, here I advise you to look into some of them if you have specific issues, being the Civitas initiative on the transport and mobility issue, being the Covenant of Mayor that I suppose many of your cities are already signatory of the project. The next slide is about the digital transition, which is the same type of approach as the one for the Green Deal, where there is an important outcome of the urban agenda for the EU, which is the living.in.eu initiative, which is a major objective of the DG Connect in the Commission, which aims at developing a human-centric digital transformation within cities, and which develop a lot of different solutions along this principle. And the digital transition is part of this new Leipzig Charter as well. The green dimension was obviously as a major transformative cross-sectoral trend affecting all dimensions of the sustainable urban development. Just here again, a lot of different hints and potential contacts of different projects that were and with whom you can get along, look into the details how your city could take part into these initiatives. That's it for my part, going from the past programming period to the current one, where you could take part on the investment by contacting your managing authorities, and the overall and broader context of the different EU initiatives that connects actually to your investment and strategies at local level. I will leave the floor now to François, except if there is some questions. I have not access directly now to the chat. Up to you, Noala, to tell me.
Yep.
To look more into details of the European Urban Initiative, which is this I would say, support for capacity building and innovation that will be developed during the 21-27 period beside the major investment programs.
Thank you, Thomas. Yes, there are a couple of questions coming through on the chat, but I think they'll also be tackled by François' presentation, so I'll come back to those. But I think when we talked about mapping the funding the ecosystem this morning, so I think those last two slides in particular will be really helpful for the cities who are maybe starting out on that mapping journey, because you have highlighted indeed a number of relevant programs. Maybe just one question linked to the city size. There's a question from Kamen. If a small city is eligible to apply directly for this kind of funding, I'm sure you can't say for all of these programs individually, but in general, is there a size threshold for cities applying for this kind of funding?
No, in cohesion policy, there is no size for the major programs investment, the operational programs to invest in cities. What matters is the approach, the territorial approach that the program will describe, and how the needs of the territories will be identified in this program. So I can just advise to the cities, if they are smaller, to look and discuss with their managing authorities at regional level to identify within the program how the cities are recognized in their specificities and in their needs to, at the second stage, get some priorities in one or the other way within the funding mechanism.
Okay, thanks, Thomas. So let's move on to François, who's going to go into more detail on the European Urban Initiative for this new funding period that's about to start. François, the floor is yours. You'll just have to unmute yourself, François, so that we can all hear you. Let me see if I can unmute you. Maybe Romain, can you give us a hand with unmuting Francois, or on your screen, Francois, just check that your microphone is unmuted. It is, yeah, because I still see you with
Hi, Noella. If I might just take the word for a quick second. Unfortunately, no, I cannot unmute Francois for him. Maybe, Francois, if we could just try to refresh the page and join again. Maybe it might do the trick. Usually it does.
Okay, thanks, Romain. So this is a little hop-in glitch. But while we're waiting for Francois, I think the point that Thomas was making about reaching out to your managing authorities and then linking up for these opportunities at national and regional level really fits into what we were talking about this morning as well, in terms of reaching out to funders. So maybe I'll take the opportunity to ask you. How many of you are planning to reach out or are already reaching out to use EU funds at national level to implement your action plan? I'll ask my colleague Adele just to pop that in the chat. We haven't prepared a Slido, but just to get some reaction on that, maybe you could just like Adele's comment to say if you are planning to use these EU funds to implement part of your action plan. That'll give us an idea of how many of you are already on the way here. And maybe you could also input in the chat if you're already in contact with your managing authority or what kind of difficulties that is for you at the moment. And we can pick up that discussion after Francois' presentation.
Nuala, do you hear me?
And we can hear you.
Oh, great. Thanks a lot. I'm sorry for the hiccup. So good afternoon from me as well, to all of you connected. That's great that I managed to get in back again. I will just now give you a bit of an insight on what the European Urban Initiative has to offer within this dynamic urban policy framework that Thomas was just describing. Starting by the overall objectives of the initiative, which is to strengthen integrated and participatory approaches to sustainable urban development, and to provide stronger links between these approaches and EU policies, and obviously cohesion policy in particular, when it comes to the 8% urban earmarking, the new policy objective 5, or more widely, of course, the big portion of investments that will take place in urban areas all across Europe. The EUI is also the expression of an ambition, which is to provide for a more coherent set of services to cities and address a certain level of, if I could say, a certain level of fragmentation that could have been observed in the past. It is about supporting all urban areas, whatever their size, and in particular to foster functional urban area dynamics, to provide support to the urban agenda for the EU and other forms of intergovernmental cooperation on urban matters. To achieve these objectives, the EUI will work on the basis of two intertwined priorities. The first one, strand A, on the support of innovative actions, and strand B, support to capacity and knowledge building, territorial impact assessments, policy development, and communication. For this, to develop this agenda, the Commission will have, and the initiative will have at its disposal an ERDF envelope of 450 million euros over the period to carry out all these objectives. Next slide, please, Nola. If we is the slide there? I don't see it myself, at least.
Yeah, sorry, this time it was me that had a little glitch, but I'm back. Can you see the slide okay now?
Yeah, well, at least from my side, I see it right now. Actually, it's here about zooming in a bit more closely to the EUI intervention logic, so to say. As you will see on this slide, it is constituted of 10 different work streams that are listed in the two central boxes here on the slides. Work streams that are supposed to feed each other within an effective value chain within which the URBACT program is also scheduled to contribute within a logic of of full complementarity between the two instruments. And all this with the ultimate goal to provide some inspiration and possibly operational assistance also to the other cohesion policy programs, both in terms of proof-tested innovations worth deploying at a wider scale, or through capacity building activities, support to policy learnings for cities as intermediate in the management, or as direct beneficiaries of these funds as well. Next slide, please. Few words now on the content of each EUI strand, starting by the key drivers of the reform of the innovative actions that takes their origin in a midterm assessment study of the current initiative. It was mentioned, the urban innovative actions, so that the EUI will be replacing. The study that was published in December 2020 builds a very encouraging picture of the performance of the current instrument, highlighting the attractiveness of the calls, the level of understanding and of acceptance of the underlying rules for the co-financing by the cities, and many other reasons that allows us to think the renewal in terms of evolution rather than of revolution. But the study also helped the Commission to identify some rooms for improvements, which of course will also constitute as many drivers. It is about having a closer attention to the definition of the impact expected of the types of urban innovations to be supported. There will be also stronger requirements in terms of sustainability, scaling up and transfer of these experimentations. Same as concerns the operational readiness of projects called to receive the biggest proportions of these funds. All in all, it is about optimizing the added value of the supported experimentation, and this within the frame of concerted efforts with URBACT, especially when it comes to the transfer of the experience. I will not be able to enter into every details of the practical changes that these orientations imply. There will be dedicated opportunities for that as soon as we will be getting closer to the launching of the first calls. But what is essential perhaps to retain at this stage are two aspects on which I would like to raise your attention, because they probably summarize most where cities could be preparing if they were willing to provide to innovate with the support of the EUI. It is first about the focus on certain categories of innovation. You find these listed in these slides, and to greater efforts also expected in terms of transfer. I will come on this point a bit later on. So what all this means? What are the types of urban innovations that EUI will be the most interested in? It's first categories of urban innovations for and led by the cities themselves. We are looking for projects supporting the cities as first institutional links and providers of services to the population in our territories. So projects by which the cities will be able, of course, to mobilize a certain number of actors at local level, while keeping a central role also in the experimentation. We also look at the testing of new ways to apply what the new Leipzig Charter that Thomas was mentioning are the key principles of good urban governance, and which are also core to the methodologies that cohesion policy is supporting through its policy objective 5 in terms of place-based, participatory and integrated approaches. In the same vein, we will also be willing to have a specific attention which is dedicated to the relevance of the projects with regard to the ERDF as a principal source of funding, including through better screening in the project proposals, the links that could be established between tested solutions and the priorities set at local, national, or even transnational level in the programs themselves. In full complementarity with other Commission priorities, it will also be about, of course, fostering cities' contributions to the green and digital transitions. And finally, bearing in mind that innovation has sometimes more to do with the environment within which it takes place rather than the solution tested itself, we will also be looking at the contextual factor in a way by targeting possibly certain areas or topics on regions faced by specific handicaps. Next slide, please. Second main priority, we will have a twofold mechanism to boost the transfer potential of tested innovations. One fold, which is already in the test phase as pilot projects are ongoing with the support of URBACT. It will consist in adapting the methods applied under URBACT transfer networks to prepare for the replication in full or in part of the current innovative actions. And as a second step of the plan, there will be probably one of the most significant changes in the scheme in comparison to the current UIA. We will have also transnational partnerships embedded within the future EUI innovative actions. So as you see, the combination of both options will be probably the most convenient to systematize these transfer efforts. And it is also a concrete illustrations where the EUI and URBACT are called to work in closer synergy as a common value chain. Next slide. If we move now further in the presentation, we'll find other areas where such synergies with URBACT are supposed to take place. Under Strand B, focusing on capacity building, the idea is clearly to build an offer that will be complementary to URBACT Cities network. We aim at putting in place an instrument that is demand-driven, easy to use for short-term cooperations between urban authorities through city-to-city exchanges, peer review, and other techniques for knowledge sharing and problem solving linked to sustainable urban development. We will also renew the model of what is known currently as the Urban Development Network as a platform for interaction between practitioners in the managing authorities, cities in charge of sustainable urban development strategies, and the Commission services through regular events taking place at regional, national, or European levels. Next slide, please. To complete the picture, under Strand B, the EUI will aim at providing for a significant contribution to knowledge capitalization and policy development on urban matters. The means are listed, are presented here on this slide. It will be about creating an EUI network of national urban contact points that will contribute to raise awareness on the opportunities and possibly also to ensure the widest participation in the member states. A knowledge sharing platform will be established as well. In the first place, to display the information produced in the frame of the initiative on contents that will be the most pertinent as concerns the urban dimension of cohesion policy, the new version of the Stratboard handbook, and other interactive tools produced in the frame of the close cooperation between DG Regio and GRC that Thomas was also mentioning. But at medium term, the ambition of this instrument on knowledge management sharing platform is to be recognized and position itself as an entry point on urban intelligence originated from other Commission services, policies, programs, and including international partners on urban policies. Capitalizing on this knowledge, EUI will also contribute to stimulate policy making through the organization of policy labs, the publication of briefs, and analyses in all areas of interest. While we will be also under the EUI taking care of the organization of the Cities Forum as major EU event organized every 2 years, and being also active in other rendezvous such as the European Week of Regions and Cities to promote EUI activities and disseminate the results as regularly as possible. Next slide. all of what I previously described will also happen in the context of the EUI support to the urban agenda for the EU. In the past 2 years, there have been quite a number of milestones which have been completed there on the continuation of this multi-level governance initiative, and that will of course frame the way the EUI assistance will be organized. The publication of the new Leipzig Charter that we mentioned, more recently the Ljubljana Agreement that opens the doors to new areas of cooperation, including on the green of cities and sustainable tourism. I will not enter into further details here as well. You find here some references for an update on these processes, and of course we can further elaborate if there are questions during our exchange later on. Next slide. Last words, well, to tell you about the next steps. The Commission and we are busy working with the objective to bring the first EUI activities to life, starting with the publication of the new call on innovative actions in the second semester of 2022. There will be a number of prerequisites for that objective to be met, starting by the contracting of the entities that has been selected for the indirect management of the initiative, namely the French region Hauts-de-France, that is also currently constituting a technical secretariat that will accompany us in the further preparation of the different EUI work streams. Meanwhile, we will continue carrying on with the discussions toward the adoption of URBACT 4, and in the view also to put in place the complementarity between both programs I was referring to in operational terms between Secretariat and stakeholders from both initiatives. And to close this medium-term perspective, the next edition of the Cities Forum that will take place early 2023. I'm very sorry that I do not have any scoop to tell you on where it will be located, because the Commission is also currently busy analyzing the applications from cities volunteering to organize it. But in any case, it will be a timely opportunity, I believe, to take stock of, at the end of the programming phase, of the latest trends with regard to sustainable urban development strategies all across Europe, and also to raise awareness on the different facets of the overall urban support function that should be fully operational at this point in time. Last slide. Well, only to thank you for your attention, and also send you the references to the EUI memo, where you will be able to find much more information than I gave you on the different EUI activities that are ongoing, and also to encourage you to have a look to the many activities that are also currently ongoing under UIA and URBACT to ensure the successful takeoff of the initiative. I stop here now, and I'm now fully ready together with Thomas to reply to the questions that you may have. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Francois, very much, and thank you, Thomas, also for this presentation. Indeed, very broad overview, but also a lot of detail there on the EUI. So we will, of course, make the slides available. The recording will be available afterwards, so you can go back and pause and go into more detail of things that interested you. But if you have any questions, again, of course, put them in the chat. And you can also take the floor. I see a few people are also requesting the floor, so I'll come to them now. So, I mean, there was one question which you touched upon at the end, Francois, there, in terms of the next funding opportunities. So for the question on when there will be a call for the next innovative actions, you mentioned it would be in the second half of the year. And on which topics? Do you have any, let's say, first orientations that you can share with us?
Yes, indeed. The timing is that one. So the idea is really to be there with the publication of the first call towards September, October of next year, if everything goes well. And of course there will be a number of opportunity to communicate ahead, of course, of the publication itself on a number of details for this course, and especially on the topics that would be that would be addressed. Well, to give you a bit of a flavor, what I can tell you at this stage is that most probably, because it was already an announced intention from the Commission in the communication on the new European Bauhaus, is that the EUI innovative actions, and especially the first call, will be focusing on the support to the new European Bauhaus. So it is a commitment taken because of the cross-cutting nature of this initiative to find in the new call, let's say, windows that would be dedicated to the new European Bauhaus in itself, and to finance experimentations that would be further developing and piloting the concept in itself. Now, whether there will be other topics associated, as it could have been the case in the past under the UIA, it's perhaps too early to say. The only thing perhaps to help for the readability of what will be happening is that if any other topics, there will be, of course, this idea of aligning the orientation, thematic orientation, with also what would be happening under the urban agenda for the EU. So for instance, possibly, but of course nothing is fully decided at this stage, but the areas of greening of cities, and why not even areas such as sustainable tourism, if they were confirmed as potential areas for partnerships and for multi-level governance in the future, could be among the topics, among the areas that could give rise to some calls. Whether it will be in the first call, whether it would be later, or on different characteristics, is something that is too early to say at this stage.
Okay, thanks, Francois. I think, yeah, there was a related point that was just put in the chat by Sally. If those mega trends of digital and climate transitions, which you mentioned that the innovative actions will link to, that URBACT are also having as priority topics. So what does that mean in practice for the applicant cities? You mentioned there might be a specific call, or do you consider them also as transversal themes that all the projects should address in some respect?
Yes, very, very interesting and important point as well. And I would say my reply would be, it would be both. So probably, as you could see from the, let's say, what could be the latest trends with regard to the thematic areas for focus of the next calls, let's say the greenings, let's say the fight against climate change or adaptability or associated topics could be one of the targets of the future calls. But there will be also something organized around the evaluation of the urban innovation in the context of the EUI, specifically in the context of the EUI. So probably an entry in the evaluation grids when it comes to defining the purpose, the innovativeness purpose of a given project, to see what would be this contribution also to green and digital transitions. Because beyond the thematic areas themselves, of course, any activities, any innovating fields have some impacts in terms of environment, and of course can be more efficient by the full use of digital capabilities which are available today. So probably it will be also a cross-cutting element that could be further analyzed as part of the innovativeness of the projects.
Okay, thanks. I'd like to come back to the link with funding integrated action plans through structural funds, in particular the regional or national operational programs, in particular the earmarking for sustainable urban development. Because we heard from many URBACT cities, and even today some examples given on that URBACT can be a doorway for cities to access bigger sources of funding. So let's say the training or the tools that are developed and the method that is used within URBACT is really helpful for cities to then be in a better position to apply for other sources of funding. Do you we've seen also in the chat, sorry, that some of the cities are really really trying to make up that link. Is there, from your, let's say, commission perspective, is there a recognition on the commission side of the projects that are developed and the action plans that are developed within URBACT, and in terms of how they're seen or rated by by other funding programs. Do you have any feedback on that?
Yeah, I think here that it's really the way we want to work in the future. It's to have a more hands-in-hands approach, where from scratch the development of the thematic approach chosen in URBACT and the method, the URBACT method, as you call it, for integrated development, do fit well and is actually embedded into the regulation of the structural funds. Which means that, for example, and that was already the case before, the concentration of the funding, which goes mainly on innovation and environment, to be quite broad here, should be reflected within the different networks of URBACT. And the method should be the method that I just described also in the presentation, with the minimum requirements and the different territorial instruments that we have, would be as well reflected into the networks of URBACT. And in this case, we would have a good, plug-in, I would say, within the cohesion policy mechanism to ensure that there is a proper landing of the integrated action plan for the URBACT networks with the managing authorities. Let's say that today there is some evaluation within URBACT showing that there is some links already that are there, and we can see, I think the evaluation shows that 1/3 of the cities and the outcomes of the networks within URBACT leads to funding at the EU level. This percentage, I think, if we size well and shape well the future networks, should logically increase to fit within the EU funding framework.
Thanks, Thomas. We're already at the end of our allocated time. That went by very quickly. So I don't know if I think I've got all the questions in the chat, but feel free to keep posting your questions, and we can also, of course, follow up. Thomas, Francois, Laura, how can our cities be kept informed of the funding opportunities that will be coming up in the future, and when the different services that you presented will be available? How can they keep tabs on that?
Yeah, well,
apart from giving everyone your personal email addresses.
Yeah, well, there is for the time being our, let's say, traditional channels through the let's say the address of InfoRegio in itself. We have the one-stop shop, for instance, that continue to be fed time to time with the latest initiative on European programs. What will come up also rather soon, as quickly as possible, will be already a sort of first interface for the EUI as such, with a website that should be made available again as quickly as possible, but in any case in a timely way to provide all the necessary information for a first call on innovation. So here as you could see, if this specific and clear objective is for the second semester of this year, this means that early on in the first semester, these platforms and tools will be made available, I would say, progressively. And for the moment, you could indeed use the channel of our unit for if any specific question in the meantime.
Great. Okay, so you can bookmark the website and the pages that have been shared in the chat. You can, of course, come back to this recording to remind yourself of some of the opportunities that have been presented. And of course, at URBACT, we'll be keeping you informed not only of the URBACT program's development and opportunities, but also linking up, as you said, with the opportunities that the EUI will offer. So thank you all for your participation. Thank you in particular to Francois, Thomas, and Laura for being so available to share with the URBACT participants. And I wish you all a very good afternoon and continued e-university. So I think that's the end of our program for today. So those of you who are joining us tomorrow from 9:30 for some networking, and from 10 o'clock for funding at your fingertips. Don't forget to go to the poll and give us some feedback on this session if you find it useful before you click off, and enjoy the rest of the afternoon.